And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here to A Week in Baseball. Stephen Walters, Frankie Hohenstein with you, and a lot of action to cover. But first, just a reminder to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Our handle is at A Week in Baseball, and a lot of news and notes to cover, Frankie. But first off, we're going to highlight the winter meetings, and those going to start up soon. The winter meetings, it's an annual event held in December, and all 30 Major League teams will be there, a lot of executives as well as minor league affiliates, and it's one of those times where you get all the GMs in one place at one time. So, you're not having to just have phone call conversations. You can really get a lot done. So, it's something great just to, hear about a lot of news during baseball. So, Frankie, what are your thoughts on the winter meetings?
Yeah, it's a great thing for baseball, especially in the offseason. For all of these teams, you get to have the managers, front office guys all coming together, like you said, and talking, making trades and making moves, telling them things they want. And, right now, before it actually starts, they're kind of getting like a Christmas wish list almost, what players they want, what they're going to ask for them, who they're willing to give up, things like that, just so they kind of have an idea going into it, what their purpose is going to the winter meetings. And it, like you said, a lot nicer than making phone calls and actually being face-to-face with someone, making a deal. It's a little more, business-like instead of just kind of shopping around. You actually get to talk to all these people.
Yeah, exactly. And not only is it just for, big league clubs making deals, it's also a trade show as well as a great place for those who want to have a job in baseball. There's a lot of opportunities, whether it's with minor league teams, even talking to some major league teams, but getting your name around there. So, for all baseball lovers, it's a great place to go. I know there's some companies that will kind of promote their products there. I know All-Star Sporting Goods, the catching equipment people, they always have a great booth set up every year. I get to see that on their social media, but just a great time around baseball and something that a lot of moves go down. So definitely tune in to MLB Network, ESPN, any media outlet during this time. And coverage begins on Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern on MLB Network. And it, as we didn't mention, but it's held in Nashville, Tennessee. So truthfully, I kind of wish we could have taken a trip up there.
It's always fairly close to us. Usually in the Southeast, they hold it a lot of times. I know, Nashville, Orlando, a couple other places that, fairly close to us. So always a great opportunity to try to go and check that out.
Yeah, Frankie, maybe next year, if everything kind of sets right, maybe we can at least go there, maybe even hold a show there. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be pretty awesome.
That would be. And so to the hot stove news and notes. Frontline starters really stealing the headlines so far, and we'll start with the big deal of the week. David Price has reportedly come to terms with the Red Sox on a 7-year deal worth $217 million, and that just edges out Clayton Kershaw's contract, $2 million more for the highest contract awarded to a pitcher. And we saw last season Price with Detroit, Toronto, had a terrific year, finished runner-up in the Cy Young voting. He went 18-5 with a 2.45 ERA. And, Frankie, this is one of those guys where when you can add him to your rotation, it makes you that much better as a team because, every fifth day you have that bulldog who takes the ball and is going to give you a solid outing.
Yeah, they really needed to pick up an ace like this, something the Red Sox really needed to put a dominant guy at the top of that rotation. And we're kind of see the Red Sox become one of those big market teams with Yankees and Dodgers and other teams that are willing to spend a lot of money. And they've been proving it this offseason, the last couple of years actually, picking up these big guys with really big contracts. And like you're saying, he definitely deserves this contract after the year he had last year, finishing 18-5 with a 1.08 WHIP and 2.45 ERA, some of the best numbers he's had in his career, really starting to come back out to that Cy Young performance that he had a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and this is a guy where it makes sense. Once again, these longer contracts, getting, past age, I'd say 34, even 35, there's always that kind of speculation and kind of just uncertainty with teams doing that. But this is a guy who gives you 200 innings a year. He's won at least 10 games in all of his major league seasons since 2009. I mean, it's one of those, it's not going to hurt you because even at the back end of his career, let's just say he, kind of tails off at, 36, 37. David Price is a guy where just him being around in the clubhouse, he can really have an impact on young guys. And we saw that with James Shields with the Royals a few years ago. James Shields was a guy who really helped David Price along, and David Price really helped a lot of those Rays pitchers along. So this is a guy where he's going to be a great clubhouse presence in addition to being a great pitcher. So even if he doesn't perform to the standards of, you're not going to perform to the standards at that late of an age, I hate to say, but it's going to be a good deal for the Red Sox.
Well, even with this long-term contract, he's proved throughout his career that he's a consistent ace. The numbers that he puts up each year, even though they're not David Price standard some years, his numbers are good enough to be the ace of almost, any club in the major league. So, and been in the league for I think around like 8 years now, putting up consistent numbers, and then have these monster great years like last year and his Cy Young award-winning year. So you kind of know what you're expecting. Even spending this big money, you're still going to get good return no matter what happens.
Yeah, and I mean a career 104 and 56, a 3.09 ERA, just a fantastic pitcher. I think the Red Sox will definitely be happy, especially because last year their starting pitching wasn't good at all. I hate to say. They had a bunch of just number 3 starters. Mm-hmm. Nobody could really you couldn't really depend on anybody. They brought some younger guys up, but it was just a lot of inconsistency with that staff. And the offense is good. And then they, this offseason they retooled the bullpen, getting Craig Kimbrell. We talked about that the other week. We were like, well, should they have saved money? Because I saw some people talking, they should have saved their prospects for, a big starter. Well, they have money. Like you said, they're a big market team. So I think it's a good thing that they went out and got David Price. This is a guy that you don't miss on. You don't pass him up. He's your guy. So the other guy would have been Zach Greinke, but I don't think he would have really wanted to be in that big market Boston media. So definitely a great deal for the Red Sox. And another frontline starter off the free agent pool, Jordan Zimmermann. And he has come to terms with the Detroit Tigers for $110 million over 5 years. And Zimmermann has really been a durable and consistent pitcher the past 4 seasons, starting at least 32 games and at least 195 innings over the past 4 years. So, Frankie, talking about Jordan Zimmermann, what do you like about this deal for the Tigers?
The Tigers definitely got a really good deal with this $110 million for 5 years for a guy that could be an ace of a team. Last year kind of struggled a little bit considering his numbers beforehand, but still had a solid year, 13-10 with a 3.66 ERA and pitched over 200 innings. So, the Tigers, they're really trying to refill some holes that they lost, trading away David Price during last year's season. So hopefully he can take that space that's been void and really do some good for the Tigers.
Yeah, and it'll be definitely good to pair him up with Verlander and Sanchez in that rotation because Verlander's not the Verlander of old. Mm-hmm. Sanchez last year had a down year, but he's one of those guys who he can bounce back. So just adding that durability factor where at least if he, I believe his ERA jumped a full point in 2015 or 2014. I believe he had 2.66 ERA, mm-hmm. but if he at least gives you 200 innings and, let's just say it's a 3.5 ERA, 3.3, you're going to be happy with that because, I think he's going to benefit a lot as well from going to Comerica Park. And it's just going to work out for the Tigers because they've had problems with pitching, whether it's bullpen. Yeah. Their starters have been good because they've had those mm-hmm. bigger name guys with the Scherzers, the Price. But sometimes it's, they're 4 or 5 guys are very inconsistent. So getting at least 3 guys who you can pretty much count on. I'm not going to say we can count on Justin Verlander. Yeah. But you can kind of 3 solid guys.
Yeah, and that's another thing you're talking about, their inconsistency bullpen-wise a couple of years that they've been having. Zimmerman's a guy that will take you deep into the ball game, as you can see with his numbers being 13-10, a lot of the games that he goes into are put in his hand and not a lot of reliance on the bullpen when he's pitching. So that's another thing that the Tigers can really benefit from.
Yeah, and I think what was even bigger of a move, may not bigger in terms of the name, but getting K-Rod from the Brewers for the Tigers. We talked about that a few weeks ago, but they just haven't had that back of the bullpen. So now having a guy in that back of the bullpen that you can rely on, it's going to help those starters out so that they don't panic when they have to give the ball up in the 7th, the 8th, because that's something, I'm sure Verlander has not been happy with his bullpen over the past few years, any of that staff. They've blown a ton of games. So it's going to be, I like what they're doing because they have a decent offense. You have the best hitter on the planet, Miguel Cabrera, but getting that pitching is the thing they lacked the other year. So it's definitely going to be a good move for the Tigers. And also, Johnny Cueto reportedly turning down a 6-year, $120 million offer from the Arizona Diamondbacks. And that was kind of an interesting, note there. I can kind of see, maybe he doesn't want to pitch in Arizona, but he's still trying to feel the market. But what do you think about Cueto turning it down?
I think that was a good decision for him. I definitely think he deserves more money for that. Comparing that to Zimmerman's deal, I think Johnny Cueto is a better pitcher than Zimmerman is, and I just think he deserves a little bit more money than what they offered him. But I agree with him completely for turning that offer down. I'm sure he can. It was probably just kind of like an offer he'd put out there, see if he'll bite on it, and if he takes it, then you just kind of be ecstatic that you got a guy like that could be an ace on your team for so cheap. So good for him for not accepting that and play the market a little bit more.
Yeah, and like you said, Johnny Cueto, I think he's a better pitcher than Jordan Zimmerman. And he's also one of those guys. Now, I will say I have to give credit to the Diamondbacks. They're going out, they, made an offer to a guy who has done well in a hitter's park, Great American. Mm-hmm. And, Chase Field down in Arizona, that's another really good hitter's park. So they're saying, okay, he's had success in Great American. He can have success here at Chase Field because the ball flies. So I have to say that was a great strategy, at least, to go after him. I don't know if they would up the ante at all because I think the Diamondbacks kind of need somebody like that. But I truthfully don't think he will end up in Arizona. I just don't think it's exactly a fit, and it's one of those might just not work out. But it'll definitely be interesting to see where he ends up, and we'll be bringing you any news that comes with Johnny Cueto. And the MVP awards announced a few weeks ago, and really not a surprise in both leagues. In the National League, Bryce Harper, the first unanimous first-place vote for NL MVP, and he really just had a breakout year, Frankie, hitting .330, 42 home runs, 99 RBIs, 38 doubles, and 124 walks. All of those were career highs, and in his previous 3 seasons, it's kind of a difference of seasons for him because previous 3 totaled 272 average, 55 home runs, 149 RBIs. He almost got to some of these numbers that he had accumulated over these other seasons, and he's really just finally living up to the hype that put him on the cover of Sports Illustrated at age 16. What did you see in the season? Yeah,
and being able to have that plate discipline that he kind of lacked in his previous years, being a young guy, a little more aggressive, got a lot of expectations over your head. You want to, put the ball in the park. That's what he's known for. Watch that video that ESPN did, hits a ball 500 feet in his high school, field and rolls across the road and everything. He's trying to be that guy that everyone thought he was going to be coming up. So he's kind of settled down a little more now, become a little more disciplined. And pitchers are just kind of, afraid of him now, and they're going to make he's going to make the pitchers throw him pitches he wants to hit and puts them out of the park. 330 average and 42 home runs with all that power, being able to hit for contact and power, and then having the discipline he does, really showed how much he's progressed throughout his career. Yeah,
this is going to be a guy that's really fun to watch. I think now we really have that who's better, Trout or Harper. We can really have that debate now more. I remember a few years ago people trying to compare the two, and I was thinking at the time, yes, they're both phenomenal athletes. they're both up there in terms of athletes, but in terms of numbers, there's no even comparison. It was almost ridiculous. So I think finally he is getting to that Trout type level, and I would argue that he would have even more RBIs if the Nationals lineup was better last year. But for me, just the biggest thing for Harper this year was staying injury free. I mean, 2014 he had the thumb injury and he kind of got wore down at the end of the season, and 2013 he had that knee injury running into the wall, and I think he really learned how to tone it down sometimes, where he knows when to really give it his best. But if they're losing 15-0, I'm not saying you don't give effort, but don't run into a wall blindly. I mean, I hate to say it, looking back on those videos of his rookie year, I mean, I know he has a lot to prove, but he would run into walls almost very recklessly. Yeah. There's a difference between going hard and being stupid. And he was kind of being stupid. I mean, I don't want to sound mean by saying that, but he wasn't doing it the way that it should be done carefully, I guess.
And that was definitely an immaturity kind of thing, that not being in the league that long, not being as young as he was, it really helped him to learn how to be the right kind of baseball player that he was supposed to be. And I'm sure all these guys kind of having a little bit of influence on him to teach him how to hold yourself, how to play the game, and not be making stupid decisions like that. Kind of seen with Yasiel Puig doing some kind of that stuff, as well, being a youngster kind of guy that hasn't really experienced the major league level, and now that he's a little more of a seasoned veteran, he's kind of shied away from those mistakes.
Yeah, and I mean, just a fun season to watch, and it'll definitely be fun to see him grow throughout the next few years. I mean, still just very young, so be definitely fun. And just to kind of round out the NL MVP voting, Paul Goldschmidt in second, Joey Votto came in third, Anthony Rizzo, the Cubs, in fourth, and Andrew McCutchen, former MVP, in fifth. And in the AL, Josh Donaldson won the MVP, earning 23 first-place votes, edging out Mike Trout, who was second, Lorenzo Cain, third, Manny Machado, fourth, and Dallas Keuchel, who finished fifth. And Donaldson just really had a terrific year for the Blue Jays, coming over from the A's and hit 297, 41 home runs, 123 RBIs, 41 doubles, 184 hits, and he led the AL in RBIs and runs, was third in home runs, and he also led the Blue Jays to the playoffs for the first time since '93. And to be honest, I don't think the Blue Jays make it that far without him. Mm-hmm. Frankie, what were the biggest things that you saw from Josh Donaldson in 2015?
Well, first of all, you got to think the Athletics are just punching themselves in the head, making that deal earlier for the switch between Donaldson and Brett Lawrie. But he just looked really comfortable, being in Toronto, just kind of had a good connection with the guys in the clubhouse, seemed to have that kind of click with all these other big-name guys, a lot of power. And I think that definitely helped them, having a bunch of veteran guys, big power hitters, guys that get on base, really helped his numbers. And they just started playing so well towards the second half of the season and just kind of clicked and just kept rolling with it, doing what he's supposed to do. And, that's pretty much proves why he deserved the MVP.
Yeah, and I love the intensity that he brought from day one. I mean, people kind of stopped and watched on the team. They were like, wow, this guy really gets it done. And I felt like that was kind of more of the motto of the Blue Jays this year. They weren't just going to settle for, okay, well, there's the Yankees and there's the Orioles. They were like, okay, this is ours. Like, let's do it, guys. Like, come on. I mean, it was great to see the Blue Jays because they really brought a different side of baseball up there in Toronto. And also, I just think the move to the Rogers Center really helped Josh Donaldson. I mean, because it's a great hitter's park. You went from Oakland, the Coliseum, which, I mean, just absolutely, you hit a ball, 400 feet and forget it, But that was great because, I mean, in the previous years, he couldn't reach that 30 home run, 100 RBI mark. So it was great to see him kind of also be in a lineup that he saw a lot of pitches because they couldn't really pitch around him, because when you have Bautista and Encarnacion behind you, I mean, which do you pitch? I mean, it pitched to. Do you walk the next three guys and then do that? So it's definitely a great move for the Blue Jays, and I think hopefully they'll lock him up in the next few years. He seems like he likes it there in Toronto, and I definitely think it would be a good career move for him. And we will step away for a moment, but when we come back, we'll talk about some coaching changes. Who is the new Dodger in blue, and who is the new hitting coach in South Beach? And welcome back to A Week in Baseball. Stephen Walters and Frankie Hohenstein with you here on WGUR 95.3 The Noise. And some coaching notes to bring along to you. The Dodgers have a new man in blue as they have tabbed Dave Roberts, a former MLB outfielder, to be their manager. And Roberts filled in for the Padres last year for only one game, but has been around coaching for a little bit, had a great career over 10 seasons playing for 5 teams, including the Dodgers from 2002 to 2004. And he also most famous for stealing the base in the 2004 ALCS to send the Red Sox to the World Series. And just like to give some credit to Kevin Millar real quick, because Kevin Millar walked, and then Dave Roberts got to steal the base. So I know on Intentional Talk, Kevin always talks about that. Yeah. So, Kevin, we're giving you a shout-out. I know you're probably not listening to us, but it's okay. But, yeah, so, I mean, I think this is a good choice for the Dodgers. They kind of steal him over from the Padres. This is a guy who played for both teams, but it's definitely, I think he's one where he can kind of deal with the personalities a little more than Don Mattingly could. I mean, Donnie Baseball did a great job, but sometimes it was more like babysitting for Donnie Baseball.
I think, like you're saying, Dave Roberts is trying to build good relationships right off the bat. We've seen some kind of articles coming up about him wanting to talk with Yasiel Puig, just kind of get to know him a little bit and what he expects of him, those kind of things, so it doesn't turn into that babysitting type role. And, hopefully he can have a lot of success. It's nice kind of see some fresh faces coming up as managers, some former players getting their chance to continue with the game. So hopefully, he's 43 this year, and he's one of the youngest Dodger managers since 1954. So maybe having that age a little bit closer can have a better relationship with his players.
Yeah, and I think also with Roberts coming in, I think he'll be able to kind of deal with Puig a little more. We see, Puig under investigation from the MLB for a bar fight last week in a Miami nightclub. So, Puig has often shown up late here and there. He's gotten in trouble with reckless driving. So I think he's kind of somebody who can come in and just be a good presence and really say, hey, dude, come on, you can be such a great player. You just really have to take care of yourself on and off the field. So I think he will definitely be a good voice down in Los Angeles. And another coaching opportunity, not done yet, but in consideration for the Miami Marlins, is Barry Bonds. Yes, Barry Bonds, the MLB home run king. Miami very interested in tabbing him as their hitting coach, and I think this is a very intriguing option because Barry Bonds, as much as we want to talk controversy, or as people would like to always bring up controversies about him, he was a great hitter nonetheless. Yep. One of those guys, he really commanded fear in pitchers at the plate. He did not miss his pitch. He got it, drove it, and one of those, he knew how to walk, he knew how to hit for average, he knew how to hit for power. Back in his younger days, he could steal bases. So this is a guy where he has such a plethora of baseball knowledge that it's great that I think just getting an opportunity to get back in baseball.
Yeah, and he definitely has a lot of things he can teach these players, a lot of really talented guys, D. Gordon, Giancarlo Stanton, and then even Hechavarria and Ozuna in the outfield, some guys that kind of need to get their bat getting along a little bit to complement their great defense. So I think this would be a good move for them, adding, Don Mattingly as their head coach. He did a little bit of spring training instruction with the Giants last year, and Giants seem to always have great hitters on their team. He's obviously was a good influence during their spring training trip. So hopefully this will be a good move for them. The only bad thing I could really think about is just the publicity. But other than that, not too many downsides to adding one of the greatest hitters onto your team as your hitting coach.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it won't be too bad, but I think as long as I think in a sense though, if the publicity does come to Barry Bonds, I think it'll help relieve the kind of negativity towards the team sometimes, because a lot of times people are like, oh, well, these young guys aren't performing, and oh, Miami's tanking. So at least we'll have something else to talk about, but it'll still bring the Marlins some attention.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. It'll be very interesting to see if they end up acquiring Bonds as their hitting coach. And we have some more hot stove news and notes to bring along. The Twins have signed Korean first baseman Byung-ho Park to a 4-year, $12 million deal, and that includes a club option for 2020, which will be $6.5 million. But we told you earlier that Park was the Twins had won the bidding for Park, and so they have come to terms. So this is a guy who can really bring a lot of power to the Twins lineup, one that is getting more powerful with guys like Miguel Sano, Trevor Plouffe, and others. So I think this will be a good move for the Twins. I know they have Joe Mauer at first, but just getting him in the lineup somehow is going to be a necessity.
Yeah, it'll be a good piece to add to a pretty good team that they had last year with a lot of the guys like you're talking about, and putting a little bit more power in their order. But, they proved last year that they have the ability to make a playoff push, and we definitely saw them lingering down there in the wild card standings. So this could be just what they need to have a good season next year.
Yeah, and we saw Jung-Ho Gong last year from the same team have a lot of success coming over here, and I don't think Gong was even regarded as much of a power hitter. So, I mean, I know he does strike out a lot, but bringing that power to the lineup, and for such a cheap, 4 years, $12 million. They did pay the posting fee, which was about, if I'm not mistaken, $12 million, 12.5. So it kind of makes it, but 4 years, $24 million. Let's just say we're adding that posting fee in there. You're paying him $6 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's relatively cheap for a power bat. So it'll definitely be something that if it doesn't work out, it's not like they paid too much. So that is the good thing. The Blue Jays have also made a deal. They have signed left-hander Jay Happ to a 3-year deal and worth $36 million, and Happ coming back to Toronto after he spent a few seasons there and was traded for Michael Saunders this past offseason. But last year, 7-2 with a 1.85 ERA over his final starts with the Pirates, and career 62 and 61, 4.13 ERA. So they might be overpaying him a little, but I think they know this guy, and he's going to give them innings.
Yeah,
so.
And he's definitely been a pretty good starting pitcher for almost every team that he's gone to. Very consistent guy, so they know what they're getting into with this deal. Already playing for Toronto earlier in his career, so good move for them. Like you're saying, might be a little too much, but 3-year deal, can't really complain about that.
Yeah, and with the deals getting more expensive every year, it's kind of hard to gauge what is now expensive, as the market continues to grow. And the Orioles have made a deal as well. They traded Mark Trumbo away. They traded for Mark Trumbo, and they traded away Steve Clevenger. Yeah, the catcher. Goodness, sorry. But, Trumbo, this is a guy who a few years ago, he was one of the premier power hitters in baseball, averaging a .251 average, 32 homers, 94 RBIs over 151 games, averaging with the Angels, but has really just kind of hit on the strikeout kind of deal where he's not getting on base much, he's striking out too much. So I think it'll be a good move though, moving to the Orioles in Camden Yards. It's definitely a hitter's park. So
yep, and like you're saying, being that big power hitter, trying to keep your power hitting going throughout your career, sometimes you lose a little bit of those small mechanics that you're used to, and the strikeouts seem to increase a lot more. So hopefully, a new team, he's kind of been moving around a lot over his career, but maybe this new team will help him, get back where he needs to be.
Definitely. And then the Mariners, they're reportedly pursuing outfielder Nori Aoki, and the Mariners really making a lot of new moves to kind of make their team a lot more athletic under GM Jerry DePoto, who came over from the Angels this past year. And so far they have Leonis Martin projected in center. In left, they're going to have Franklin Gutierrez, who had a great comeback 2015 after, I believe, missing all of 2014. And then Seth Smith will probably platoon there. So you kind of have a good mix. And then if you add Aoki with Cruz, where you can DH Cruz a little more, I think that's going to really help them because Safeco is a big field, so having a good outfield will definitely be key. And then finally, around the big leagues, the Rays acquiring Hank Conger for cash considerations. Always fun to get traded for money, right? So he's going to battle it out in spring training with Rene Rivera and Kurt Casale, and he provides some offense, hit 11 homers in 73 games, so definitely be an upgrade in the offensive category behind the dish for the Rays. And now to your Atlanta Braves, some news and notes. Of course, it's always some disappointing news for many of us in Braves country, but the Braves traded Cameron Maben to the Tigers for Ian Kroll and Gabe Spear, both lefty relievers. Frankie, what are your thoughts on the move?
Well, this is kind of panning out to look like last offseason. We started trading a lot of guys away, weren't signing our free agents back, losing guys like Hayward, and then we started signing all these new guys, and I'm like, okay, we might be pretty decent this year. I like these acquisitions we're getting, and then it just kind of turned out to be a bust. We got a couple new guys, more pitchers. We got a bunch of them already. I'm sure, like we've been talking, they're probably going to deal some of those guys away to some of those younger guys, but keep a good base of them for the rebuild once they get to SunTrust. But, got Jim Johnson back, signed him to a 1-year deal, $2.5 million. So, trying to see if he can prove himself in Atlanta. Had a 2.25 ERA in 49 games, going 2-3. And just one thing I was, noticing, we were talking about earlier, being in that closing role, we didn't really see that Jim Johnson that we used to know, but as an eighth-inning guy, he did pretty well for us. So also signing Bud Norris, one of those guys, had a great year in Houston a couple years back, moved to the Orioles and then to the Padres. We signed him 1 year for $2.5 million. And, one of those veteran guys, been in the league a long time. Last year, just horrible, 6.72 ERA, just not good. But 2014 went 15-8 with a 3.68 ERA. So if we can get him back to that kind of pitching, I'll take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. He's going to have a mid to upper 3 ERA, but as long as he can give you innings and win some games for you, I think he's definitely going to be a good veteran presence because that was something lacking in the Braves rotation towards the end of last year. We had a lot of young guys, then we traded away Alex Wood, and we didn't really have kind of that veteran to be around to mentor these guys. So I think Bud Norris coming in is going to be good for the Braves, and they got him very cheap. I mean, 1 year, $2.5 million. You're not breaking the bank for a starting pitcher, and it's somebody who has had success in the past. So we'll definitely have to see. I think it'll be a good move, especially working with Roger McDowell. And that was a big reason that Jim Johnson came back to sign with the Braves. I mean, he's one of those guys where, like we said, saved 101 games over from 2012 to 2013, and just is a great pitcher, has a great sinker, but when it gets flat, that's when he can go wrong. And also for the Braves, they have signed first right-hander David Carpenter to a minor league deal with an invitation to spring training. Remember, Carpenter a few years ago had some good seasons with the Braves, and last year was with the Nationals and the Yankees, so good to get him back. Hopefully he can return to the form that he was when he was successful in Atlanta. And then one of my favorite players just around the big leagues is infielder Gordon Beckham. The Braves have signed him to a 1-year, $1.25 million deal with $500,000 in incentives. And Gordon, a Georgia native, born here, went to the Westminster schools in Atlanta. My high school played them a lot, and I have a lot of friends who went there, and they talked, and they said he was always there during, preseason workouts, and they get to see and talk to him, and they just all said he was a very nice guy. He also went to the University of Georgia, and this is a guy who hasn't lived up to his expectations in the big leagues. One of those where drafted 8th overall in 2008, was really going to be one of the next big stars, but didn't exactly do that. But he's a good defender and has flashes of those offensive brilliance.
Yeah, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a girl that I went to high school with, her cousin's married to Beckham. So I think if he came to my high school a couple times, hitting the batting cage and stuff like that, I was never around when he was there. So that's kind of disappointing. But I like this move by the Braves, having that, homegrown kind of guy. I looked at his Twitter a little bit, really excited to be with us, being Georgia born, being an Atlanta Braves fan. I mean, I'm sure that's one of your dreams come true, to play for the team that you've been growing up watching. So I can only expect great things from him. And, he's been a pretty good staple player, always kind of consistent, not really, like you said, turned out what he was expected to be. But I think we got him for a pretty good price, just a little bit, almost $2 million with the added incentives. But great move for the Braves, and, I'm sure he's excited to play for us.
Yeah, Frankie, do you think you can get Gordon on the show?
I can't work any miracles, Steven.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, but he's kind of that Kelly Johnson type player. He can play all around the infield, will give you good defense, and hopefully he hits a bit more.
Yep.
Hopefully Turner Field will be friendly to him.
Maybe we should get Barry Bonds.
Hey, we'll call up John Capuella and talk to him. And then the final Braves note, Mike Minor, non-tendered by the Braves, and non-tendered, you'll hear that a lot this week. Non-tendered means they do not offer them a contract, because arbitration-eligible players have an option where if you don't want to go to arbitration with them, then you can just not offer them a contract whatsoever. And that usually comes into play when somebody was injured the previous year, missed a lot of time, and because in arbitration, you have to offer them 80% of their salary from the previous year. Mike Minor made around $5 million, so if they were to go to arbitration with him, they'd have to give him at least, I believe it was upper $4 million. And for somebody who just came off injury, that's not something the Braves are willing to do. Mm-hmm. So that does not mean that the Braves have cut ties with him, because they may sign him to, say, a $1 million deal with $3 million in incentives, where if he hits 150 innings, if he wins so many games, if he makes so many starts, doesn't go on the DL, then these will kick in. Yeah. So I don't think it's the last time the Braves have seen Mike Minor, but we saw them non-tender Medlin, and then Medlin went to the Royals. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there.
Yep.
But so we once again thank you for listening here to A Week in Baseball. We will not have a show next week, but we will join you after the new year to bring you all of the news and notes around the big leagues. And
it's going to be a lot of action.
It will, definitely, especially with the winter meetings coming up. Remember, those start Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern on MLB Network, and definitely something fun to watch with all of the rumors and all of the notes, and just baseball being, kind of being active during the off season.
It's right around the corner.
It'll be very fun. And we wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and a Happy New Year, and we will see you in the new year.